I feel like MGK is a good example of that, Machine Gun Kelly, because he grew up straight rapper from Cleveland. Really didn't it started dabbling a little bit in alternative punk at times, but for the better part of a decade was putting out straight rap, and I'm a huge fan of Machine Gun Kelly's rap. And then he started performing pop punk, and I thought it was really fucking good. I'm a big fan of his latest releases and his work with Travis Barker. And he obviously had a huge active listener base because he went from rap to pop punk, which now these days there's a lot of crossover. Yeah. But for him to do that and retain the fans that he had from his rapping days, Wild Boy days, Hotel Diablo, he probably had some fans leave, but he also had a large chunk of them that stayed and said, like, all right, you know, I trust Machine Gun Kelly. I've, you know, built a relationship listening to this artist. You know, I feel a certain way about him, and I'm willing to give this album a stream. And it's worked out for him really well. There are other artists that may not be able to make the transition that he did into pop punk and retain the same number of listeners and be able to sell out shows in the same fashion. Because it is a huge it's like if like Jack Harlow put out a pop punk album next year, like he's really fucking big, obviously. But the question is, how many of his fans would he retain that loved him for his rap? And that is something valuable to me, like being able to take creative risks and knowing that you have that bond with your fans.
That's a good artist example of the importance of super fans, because I loved MGK when he was a rapper, but then I went and saw him at Lollapalooza in like 2017 or something, right when he was testing out the pop punk alternative stuff. I walked up to the show. I knew his like major hit rap songs, and then he's up there with like a guitar doing pop punk. And I remember I like was in the back of the crowd. I was like screw this, like this is what is he doing? And then now when the timing's so important too, because at that time there was no pop punk resurgence, and now that's like really happening, and he stuck with it. And not only did he stick with it, but his fans stuck with those core fans that you're talking about. Stuck with him, so that even the fans like me who maybe would jump off the bandwagon didn't matter so much, because he had the real fans, to the point where now I'm back on the bandwagon because I love the newer stuff.
Yeah, like it's to you, it was such a shock from what you were used to listening from him that it was an initial rejection. And then you came back at a later punk. At a later punk. Yeah, that's the next album title. A later punk, postmodern punk. But yeah, it was an initial rejection, and then you, for whatever reason, decided to come back to him, and that, like, I wouldn't describe myself as a super fan of Machine Gun Kelly, but I'm somewhere in between of just an average fan and a super fan, where I didn't feel rejected by the pop punk, but I also didn't get it at first. I was still listening to it, but I was like, where is this going? Like, is this a one-off song? Like, is this going to be a couple albums? Is this him forever? Is this not? And then during quarantine, he was putting out a variety of combinations with rap covers and alternative covers. He was doing covers with Youngblood, and then he was also rapping over Shawn Mendes instrumentals, tweaking them. And I was like, oh, like he's actually really passionate about the punk atmosphere and the pop punk atmosphere. He's hanging out with Travis Barker. He's playing guitar. He's singing. He's getting better at singing, and that to me was an example of having that connection where you're willing, like, it's not just the music, and TikTok is a huge part of that, where you can see the behind the scenes of artists making these creative videos and then putting them out, and then going to listen to the music and have that connection.
Yeah, and he crushed it during the pandemic with those videos. Like,
Oh yeah.
and that's another thing is he's been grinding for a long time, and like you can tell he wants it and he wants nothing. There's nothing else for him.
He was having covers with 100 million streams just on YouTube. The Smoke and Drive cover with Mike Posner.
Yeah.
Like there were a lot of artists that took a step back from making music during the quarantine, and you know, you do what you have to do if you're going through something, which everyone was collectively to different extents. But if you're in a place where you feel like you can't put out music, then that's okay. You do what you do for you. There were also artists that maybe were up to making music, but just kind of packed it in for the pandemic, thinking like, oh, the world's not moving, so I don't have to move. My fans will be there when this shit ends in 2 months, and it ended up being 2 years. And Machine Gun Kelly was one of the artists who was constantly putting out something, you know, every week or multiple times a week, whether it was a cover or a new song or both. And I really appreciated it, looking back on the pandemic, looking back on like 2020, 2021. He was someone who was consistently just trying to do shit.
Hey guys, this is a quick reminder to check out AUXORO Premium, the best deal in premium podcasting. On AUXORO Premium, you gain access to bonus episodes, the unlicensed therapy series, the ability to submit topic suggestions for the podcast, exclusive Ask Me Anything episodes, and the entire premium catalog for only $5 per month. Go to auxoro.supercast.com, that's AUXORO.supercast.com, to join the premium gang today.